2. Welcome back, WNST, Towson, Baltimore, and WNST.net. With the Orioles malaise this summer, I have let this guy rest. He has been good to me for all 35 years of my journalism career. And after this kind of a beatdown in Miami over the weekend, I have to go to the sage professors in my world. John Eisenberg, he blogs about all things Ravens at Ravens.com. You can follow his act out on Twitter, as well as the many books he has written back from Cotton Bowl days and Ironmans and all sorts of good things. We welcome him back on. John, I've given you off since the draft, man. Like it's been months since we've gotten together, and on the backside of 59-10 and a perfect quarterback rating for Lamar Jackson, I thought I needed a fact and an opinion today from John Eisenberg on all of this. How you been, man?
Well, I'm doing well, absolutely doing well, and yeah, you picked a good time to call. It's hard to argue with 59-10.
Well, not a bad time for you to be beginning your podcast here this week. Now that you're in the podcast world as well, but the Lamar Jackson thing, I think I go back to the first night he was drafted. I think I did some radio with you soon thereafter about what happens to Joe Flacco. We now know he plays on Monday nights in Oakland, and the Lamar Jackson show and what Eric DeCosta and Ozzie Newsome and the brass were thinking 17 months ago when they make him a draft pick. Not just a draft pick, but a first-round draft pick where they get an extra year of him. They get to train him. They get training wheels for Flacco. They knew that was going to be an ugly departure, as you and I predicted a year and a half ago. And yet, to open the season with a quarterback that could deliver that kind of an effort, this has sort of been a little bit of a dream scenario over the last year and a half about how to retool the Ravens team and roster.
Well, it is. It's definitely an interesting thing. I mean, you saw it coming. You knew it was going to happen. No team takes a quarterback in the first round if they're not going to play him eventually. So that was a stunning night, and it did signal where the Ravens were headed. I think Flacco was here and was so entrenched that it was hard to envision that it would happen that quickly. But it did. He got hurt, and so, they've turned to Lamar. And what's really interesting about Lamar, I think, and I don't know, I mean, they certainly talked to him a lot before they drafted him. I think they've gotten a young man, a little different than maybe what some people envision. He showed up. Flacco liked him. Flacco didn't have a problem with him. He's no nonsense. He's just a kid. He's really young, but he's affable. He doesn't have a big ego. He's very driven. He works hard. And he's all about football. There's just not a lot not to like. And I think he played last year. He did pretty well. There were some obvious shortcomings. He worked hard on them in the offseason. And
that showed up, right? I mean, literally, if you're wondering where the report card is, we can throw the ball around in August. We can throw the ball in the backfields with Nick Foles and these goofy preseason games where there's no game plan and nobody's trying. It's a whole different thing when you're out there on Sunday trying against professionals and being able to do that on the road in your hometown, like some sort of coordination, not just for him, but for Hollywood Brown as well. And when those guys do well, that reflects well, upon Eric DeCosta, who's sitting 8 feet away and trying not to crack a grin about how all this is working out in week one because you want to stay level. But this has been, quite a game plan to put these weapons together and to put that team on the field on Sunday.
Well, certainly everything that they brought in worked on Sunday. I mean, they brought in Mark Ingram. He runs for 50 yards in the first play of the season, bringing Hollywood Brown touchdowns, his first 2 touches. I mean, a year later, Mark Andrews, who looks like an absolute beast, honestly, at tight end, 8 catches. He just sort of picks up steam when the other guys ease off, and he's going to be tremendous. So, I mean, there's no doubt Lamar has more weapons than Joe had. Can we say that? I believe that is the case. And I think Joe Flacco might have done pretty well in this offense, throwing to Hollywood Brown and handing off to Mark Ingram. It's a nice set of a nice supporting cast, but it's Lamar, and Lamar does change the defense because of his ability to make things happen with his legs. So it's exciting. It's something different. Yeah, there's going to be some ups and downs. I mean, every day. I mean, the Dolphins are bad. They're probably the worst team in the league, and so that's going to make you look good, and it's not always going to be like that. Everybody knows that, but I do think the arrow is pointed up, and it's really interesting to watch, and it's fun.
John, at what point did this intuitively make sense to you? I think we're all trying to piece it together because I spent 6 months of the off season, right, from riding around with Brian Billick all day to having drinks with Marvin Lewis to talking on the phone with coaches to hanging out with writers and former coaches and scouts and people could look at Lamar Jackson and say, yeah, okay, but that's nice, but I don't want to bet my franchise on a quarterback that I'm going to send in the run into linebackers 12 or 15 times. That no matter how much they like the kid or the demeanor or even the fact that he can throw the ball, right? That he could make that kind of a throw to Hollywood Brown. The notion is in order for us to win with him, he's going to have to become a running back some weeks. Maybe not against the Miami Dolphins when it's 100 degrees, and maybe there will be very few weeks where he doesn't have any grass stains on his pants, which he didn't on Sunday because he wasn't running around like that. But they're going to need him to do that. But the more he can throw the football, the better he can throw the football, the better he can be as he called it street ball 2 weeks ago, within, I say, 18 yards in that Kurt Warner Arena Football League box, that they have guys that can make things happen because of the running game, that if he can be deadly accurate at that level, they can win a Super Bowl like that because that's Kurt Warner did.
Well, yeah, I mean, it's certainly. I mean, I think some teams would gladly trade places with him right now, and it's to have a nice young core like that and a quarterback, a young, exciting playmaking quarterback, not the standard one. But I mean, what the Ravens have done here, I mean, they've called it revolutionary, and it's really interesting. And I don't know how revolutionary it really is. But they are going with a quarterback who's different than these other guys. They made the decision as an organization that's saying, listen, we can keep going with these drop-back guys, these classic drop-back guys. How many of them have won Super Bowls? How many of them, other than Tom Brady? Okay, you take out the 2 or 3 greatest of all-time guys that have passed through. How many have won? Take away Manning, take away Brady, Ben. Roethlisberger's won a couple. Joe won one, but Aaron Rodgers. I mean, there's a few, but not many. And what they have done, and why it's a revolution, is they have said, we're not going to go down that route again. We're going to try something different. We are going to try something different with this young guy, and so that's what's interesting about it. And it turns out he can pass the ball and he can run. And they've surrounded it with some guys, and we'll see where it goes. But it is very interesting to watch and a lot of fun.
John Eisenberg writing about things at Baltimore Ravens and doing a new podcast. See, I mean, the secret's out now, Eisenberg. I've been having you on my show for 3 decades. People know you're really good at the radio thing. So now they're finally, at your young age, giving you a chance to have your own show. I think it's awesome. I'll be listening.
Well, yeah, they came to me. They wanted something, and I thought, sure, everybody else, it seems to be, is doing a podcast. So the podcast starts this week, is the first week, and the name of the podcast is What Happened to That Guy? And it's right up your alley, Nestor. It's about former Ravens and life after football.
Wow. You're doing Jason Brown first then, huh?
No, I'm not doing Jason Brown. I did go through a lot of guys because all the stories are interesting. And I wanted to find some stories that people maybe didn't know or would really be fascinated with. I'm fascinated with former players. I've written a bunch of books of pro football history. I can't count the number of times I've gone up to a front door, knocked, and seen somebody shuffle into the door, and talk to these guys. They don't have to be old guys, but...
I remember Joe Don Looney changing your life, as I remember, correct?
Yeah, Joe Don Looney is exactly right. I interviewed him in a geodesic dome. This was a number of years ago. Former Colt. But, so I've picked out a few guys whose stories stood out to me. My first episode is Jermaine Lewis, the kick returner from the Ravens Super Bowl. And I will follow that up with Peter Boulware. Spent a long time talking to Peter.
The mayor of Tallahassee, right?
Practically. Well, not literally, no. But
he's my Facebook friend. I mean, I'm Facebook friends with a lot of these people, right? So
yeah.
if I start giving you a couple of guys, like go find Ed Sutter for me, okay? I found Mike Frederick 2 years ago up in Philadelphia and had him on. And you know what's going to be a fun exercise for me? I reached to Jack Del Rio a couple weeks ago and said, "Hey, Jack, you doing TV? Come on." He's like, "No, I want to come on the week Billick's going in the Ring of Honor. I want to come on and talk about Brian." So part of the old timers for me is reaching to these guys. They all have had. There is a life after football, and the football life is short. I saw Derek Alexander a couple weeks ago, right, running around with the players out there, and now at Morgan State as well. There are so many of them. The Ravens, when they came here, there were no alumni, right? They were just the Colts alumni. Now, 23, 24 years later, we got over 1,000 persons that are out there running around that once wore a Raven helmet, right?
Absolutely. So many of the stories are interesting. And, former players, I mean, let's face it. I mean, there's a lot of headlines, right, about NFL players and CTE and all this stuff. And, you get the feeling from reading that, you would think that, they're all broken down and who knows what's going to happen to them. It's just not the case. There's a lot of, sure, some people have problems. But
where's Eric Zier? I can't find him. You find Eric Zier, let me know.
Yeah, Eric Zier. I haven't chased him down yet, but I did speak to Kyle Bowler. Had a long chat with Kyle Bowler.
How's Kyle? What's he doing with his life?
Kyle is doing well. He's happy. He's living out in California. He made enough money, and it was very interesting to talk to him, go back and look at his time here and how he thinks, what he thinks about it all these years later. And I got some other voices in this podcast. I sat on with Brian, your man, Brian Billick, and went over 4 or 5 of these guys that he coached, and he had a lot of interesting insights, fascinating insights. Of course, made the podcast twice as good. I mean, he's just so good. And
Brian's one of my favorite people in any walk of life, anywhere I've been in my almost 1 years on the planet. And I'm gonna do a deep dive on Brian Billick over the next couple of weeks. He's my partner here for the last 12 years for Living Classrooms, and our private conversations, public conversations, the fun that we have, and the business we got into together, and and all of that. But he is one of my favorite people. So to have him on at this point, and I think everyone has some relationship with him, right? If you're a Ravens fan over 25 years, it's easy to look past the difference maker he really was here. And I know he's going to get all that 2 weeks from now.
Yeah, we're doing a whole lot better now than we did when he was the coach and I was writing columns at the Sun. We're doing a whole lot better. But so which we kind of laugh about. But anyway, he is doing great and was very helpful. And there's just a lot of voices in this podcast. And, I hope people will tune in and listen. I find it very interesting. I mean, it's mine. I'm in there a lot. This is my dirty little secret, of course. And Nestor, as you know, I mean, I've written, these days I'm doing mostly Ravens columns and game analysis. But in essence, in my heart, I'm sort of a storyteller. I've been writing these books and find a good story and tell it. Well, this podcast format is great for storytelling. It is just wonderful. You can just let it fly as long as you want. And so I'm trying to sort of merge that skill that I have with what I'm doing these days for the Ravens. So I think it's really going to work out
for you, John. I'm betting on you on this one. You sitting and talking to former Ravens, that's something I want to check out. At BaltimoreRavens.com, you can find John Eisenberg out on Twitter, of course, and writing. But you got a book, or is this the new book for you? You're going to just sit and talk to old Ravens, which, I mean, that's a good gig. I love that gig. That's the gig I have.
Yeah, that's all I got right now. And it's plenty. It's a lot of work, as anybody who's done a podcast knows.
Well, I do them all day.
Yeah.
So, I think I resemble that comment. For you and picking former players, I mean, I'll sit here and rattle off guys that I'm not in touch with. I am in touch with many of them. John, you've known me since I was 15 years old. I mean, nothing has shaped my life like this football team, right? And having the football team around, and now the notion that the baseball team, I think the baseball team is in jeopardy, and if anybody doesn't understand that, then they don't understand that people aren't going to the games, and in order for it to not be in jeopardy, it needs to be supported. And John, it was not lost on me with the Ravens this weekend, and I don't know why this hit me, but I came out of the hotel on Sunday morning that I was in over in Aventura, And I get off the elevator, and I saw two poor bastards in Dolphins gear. One of them had a Tunzel jersey on. The other one had a Stills jersey on. Like, I'm talking the nice jerseys, okay? And I there is that punchline that you obviously understood that, and that's not a joke. That really happened. And then I got off the elevator, and I forgot something. I got back on, and I went back up, and I got in an elevator, and I was not at like a big football. I was just off the strip, staying someplace, you know. And someone got on, and someone had an Ed Reed and a Ray Lewis, a black and a purple. And I thought to myself, well, there's a juxtaposition, right? Like, I'm in South Florida. It's 92 degrees. It's game day. My wife's got the cooler, you know, ready to go over to the stadium. And I thought to myself, the difference between being a Dolphins fan and a Ravens fan, right? And I remember Don Shula and, you know, Shake and Bake the Dolphin steak, and when they had Dan Marino and they had Zonka and Kick and Morris and Warfield, all that stuff. And I think, man, the Ravens have had this rich, incredible thing over the last 25 years where the John Ogdens and the Ray Lewises and the Ed Reeds are in. And now I'm going to go watch Marshall Yanda and maybe Justin Tucker try to get in. And they just got rid of Terrell Suggs, and he's probably getting in. And there's this whole thing that the Ravens have that the Dolphins don't have, that the Buccaneers don't have, that the Redskins don't have, that most places don't have. And it's really incredible. Now you're getting into the other part of this, right, where you're not just talking to Ed Reed and Ray Lewis and these guys, but all of the other stories around that, the Peter Boulwares and the Jason Browns and whoever was around, because they touched all of these guys. And the Ravens now have that thing, and that serves them well when Lamar Jackson is throwing for a perfect quarterback rating in week one. It really does.
Well, that's an interesting analogy you brought up, because really, I did think about that when I was watching the Dolphins. I thought, this is the Orioles. I mean, you know, they just traded their guy. I mean, it is a rebuild.
Owner's a goof, you know, and it's obvious the owner there is part of the problem. Whether he wants to acknowledge it or not, he is.
And good luck to him. You know, they've traded for this quarterback, Rosen, who's going to be the guy. You hope he's decent.
Another guy that Lamar got picked over, right? Literally.
Right. So, that is definitely an analogy, and it's no fun. It sure is nice to be on the other side. How about those games where when the Yankees beat the Orioles 17 games in a row or whatever it was this year, and it was just literally a mismatch. I think if the Ravens and the Dolphins played 17 times, I think the Ravens would win all 17. And so it is a lot more fun to be on the other side of that. And so it is refreshing, and it is a reflection. It is a reflection of the organization and of years of sort of top-down management and the chain of command being in the correct order and sort of sound decision-making, I think. You know, look what goes around in this league. I mean, the New York Jets cut their third-round draft pick this year. And the Minnesota Vikings traded for Kerry Vedvik, fifth-round draft pick for a guy who never kicked in the league. And you just don't see the Ravens doing that as much as some other teams, and it does pay off on the field in the long run, and it has for years after years. You know, even with ebbs and flows of the thing, you know, it's sounder than a lot of operations, and so it makes it a lot more substantial. Really, is the word.
Are you saying that Antonio Brown wouldn't fit in around here and will fit in just wonderfully up in Foxborough?
Well, I think Antonio Brown will fit in up in Foxborough. And, you know, I mean, that would have been interesting here. I'll say this. For a long time, the Ravens had the same sort of culture that could have handled that. You know, there was an awful lot of people patrolling that locker room that didn't put up with anything. And, you know, they wouldn't have, I think they could have made it work here. Whether now it's awfully young.
You think Marshall Yanda would like that? You think John Harbaugh could put up with that? I mean, what has happened there in Oakland over the last couple of weeks? I mean, what happened in Pittsburgh prior to that? And I don't. Everybody just seems to think Bill Belichick's going to just fix this, and Tom Brady. I mean, this guy's nuts. I mean, and taping private conversations and putting them on the internet. I mean, you got to be kidding me.
Yeah. No, when I heard that one, I was like, whoa. I mean, it's just not worth it. He's not that good. I mean, nobody will put up with that, and you shouldn't have to. And so, I don't know. It's a real test of the Patriots. They're already good. They don't have to have him. And, you know, he's hopefully he'll get up there, or not hopefully, or whatever. You know, he'll realize he gets up there, they don't really need him. They don't have to have him. They won the Super Bowl with lacrosse players playing wide receiver. So I mean, maybe he'll understand. Maybe he'll understand that he's not so important and calm himself down a little bit because he's completely out of control. It's actual criminal behavior with taping phone conversations. So I don't know. Not many. He's one step away from the XFL, but this is an interesting place for him to land, and I think it has a chance.
John Eisenberg is our guest. He is hosting a new Where Are They Now series, blogging away, writing away, opining away, and now podcasting, joining our side of storytelling. What is making you pick a former Raven? What's the criteria for you to find a former Raven to tell their story? Because I can't find Jason Brown. I mean, I'm Facebook friends of probably 200 former Ravens, or LinkedIn, or they're in my phone or whatever. It's the 700 or 800 that I've lost track of that I'm most interested in. Jason Brown is probably the most interesting guy in growing food and feeding hungry people that I would love to sit and talk to him. And I know he's talked to 60 Minutes, for crying out loud. I find him to be a fascinating guy. Shannon Sharp's in front of everybody every day, right? Like Ray Lewis opened a restaurant. To me, it's the more obscure guys that I only get to see once in a while that I love to hear what's up.
There are some unbelievable stories. I am not going to give away the story yet, but there are, and I'm not even picking all of them, but when you really dig into it, some of these they're not lesser known guys. I mean, they're names that a lot of people will remember, but the stories are amazing. And what crosses the line, what I decide to do is just what interests me. Pure and simple. What I think, boy, this sounds interesting. I want to talk to this dude. So that's what it came down to. And I'm not going to go overboard. Going to have probably 8 episodes this year, and hopefully expand from there.
All right. Well, I'm going to be keeping my radar up for former Ravens doing cool stuff, so you can go profile them and I can listen to you talk to them. How about that?
Donations accepted.
There you go. And no books, which means you're exhaling. It means the next book's right around the corner. It probably means Lamar Jackson needs to win a Super Bowl so you can write Purple Rain 3 for me. How about that?
No. Well, I'm not saying he won't do that. We'll see who writes it.
Man, it's the worst thing in the world. I tell a writer he has to write a book, and he's like, no, not that. I would be the worst.
Right, please. Enough.
See you later, John. I appreciate you, man. Take care. We'll see you this week.
All right, see you.
John Eisenberg, one of my favorites who makes me smile so much, one of my mentors and friends from the minute I walked into the Baltimore Sun on January the 15th, 1986. It's true. That's when I walked in there. From the News American. We've come a long way, John Eisenberg, 33 years later, where you're doing my lousy radio show and making it better. Find him at BaltimoreRavens.com and find him on Twitter. Nasty at WNST.net finds me. The BuyAToyota.com Audio Vault is the repository. I'm going to start using that word. We've been calling it the Audio Vault, the Audio Repository for all of our podcasts. Find it out there. Listen to what you want, when you want, how you want, where you want. It's what we do. Strategic Factory helps you create your masterpiece. I've got my Baltimore Positive logos coming on hats and shirts and all sorts of OtterBox skins and different things on my phones. You'll see. We're going to make a difference. Baltimore Positive in Catonsville this week. Thursday with Sarah Heminger of Thread at Jennings. Really looking forward to that. Friday morning with Ben Jealous at State Fair. Next week, City Council President Brandon Scott joins us at Fadley's for a crab cake and a discussion about the future of our city. We are Baltimore Positive. I am Nestor. We are WNST.net, AM 1570, WNST Towson, Baltimore, and we never stop talking Baltimore sports.